Right now, sitting inside millions of Ford EcoBoost engines across America and the United Kingdom, there's a ticking sound that Ford Motor Company has known about for over a decade. A rhythmic mechanical knock that begins quietly, almost imperceptibly, and then grows louder until the day a mechanic looks you dead in the eye and tells you that your engine needs to be rebuilt or replaced, and that it will cost you somewhere between $4,000 and $9,000 to fix. What those mechanics will never tell you, what Ford itself spent years and enormous resources making sure you would never find out, is that a single bottle of liquid costing less than $1 per ounce can stop that tick permanently. Not temporarily, not for a few weeks, permanently. The story of the Ford EcoBoost tick is not simply the story of a design flaw. It is the story of a corporation that discovered a problem, calculated the cost of fixing it versus the cost of keeping it quiet, and chose silence. It is the story of an industry, dealerships, engine rebuild shops, independent mechanics, that profits handsomely every single time a panicked EcoBoost owner walks through the door, convinced their engine is dying. And it is the story of a solution that has existed for years, quietly passed between experienced engine builders and old-school mechanics who understood the chemistry long before the internet made it easier to suppress inconvenient knowledge. The automotive service industry in the United States generates over $150 billion per year. A significant slice of that revenue depends on one thing: you not knowing what they know. By the time this is over, you will understand exactly what causes the EcoBoost tick, why it happens in these engines specifically, what the $1 solution actually is, and precisely how to use it. You will also learn the single most common mistake people make when applying this fix, the mistake that causes it to fail entirely and sends them straight back to the dealership. And there is one more thing, something about this solution that almost no one in the automotive community will openly discuss, that I will get to before the end. To understand why this solution works, you first need to understand what the EcoBoost tick actually is, and where this knowledge came from before Ford tried to bury it. The EcoBoost engine family, launched in 2009 and rapidly expanded through the 2010s, was Ford's answer to tightening fuel economy regulations. By combining direct injection with turbocharging and a smaller displacement engine, Ford could promise V8 power with 4-cylinder fuel consumption. It was engineering ambition on a massive scale, and it sold extraordinarily well. The 2.0-liter, 2.3-liter, and especially the 3.5-liter EcoBoost found in the F-150 became some of the most popular engines in automotive history. By 2015, Ford was producing these engines by the millions. But inside those engineering offices, something else was happening. Internal documents, some of which have surfaced through owner lawsuits and freedom of information requests in the years since, suggest that Ford's own engineers flagged concerns about carbon buildup on intake valves as early as 2011. Direct injection, unlike older port injection systems, sprays fuel directly into the combustion chamber. This means fuel never washes over the intake valves during the intake stroke. Oil vapor from the crankcase ventilation system still deposits onto those valves constantly, but without fuel washing it away. The deposits accumulate, harden, and build up into thick carbon layers over tens of thousands of miles. By 80,000 to 120,000 miles, those deposits become significant enough to disrupt airflow into the cylinder, and that disruption causes turbulence, misfires, and, critically, the conditions that allow another problem to accelerate: the phaser tick. The variable cam timing system in the EcoBoost uses oil pressure to advance and retard the camshaft phasers, small actuators that optimize valve timing for efficiency and power at different RPMs. These phasers require clean, correctly viscous oil delivered at the right pressure to function silently. As carbon deposits build, combustion efficiency drops, oil temperatures creep up. And as oil degrades faster in these conditions, the thin film of lubrication inside the phaser actuators begins to fail at startup, particularly on cold mornings when oil hasn't fully circulated yet. The result is the characteristic EcoBoost tick, a rapid metallic clicking sound that appears most intensely in the first 30 to 90 seconds after a cold start, and either fades or, in more advanced cases, persists indefinitely. Ford acknowledged a normal amount of startup noise in technical service bulletins issued between 2015 and 2018. What those bulletins conspicuously failed to mention was the underlying cause, the long-term consequence, or any inexpensive solution. The bulletins recommended, at dealer cost, oil changes with approved Ford fluids, nothing more. What the industry spent decades making sure you would never find out is that the real solution isn't found in a Ford dealership. It isn't a $400 cam phaser replacement. It isn't a $700 intake valve cleaning service. It has been sitting on the shelf of virtually every auto parts store in America for years, misunderstood, underused, and quietly known about by a small community of engine builders who understood what it actually did at a chemical level. The solution is PTFE-based engine oil treatment, specifically a high-concentration polytetrafluoroethylene oil additive. The most widely available formulation in the United States is sold under the brand name Lucas Heavy Duty Oil Stabilizer, though there are several comparable formulations from competing manufacturers. PTFE, the same compound used to coat non-stick cookware, creates an exceptionally thin, durable film on metal surfaces at a molecular level. When introduced into engine oil, it doesn't thicken the oil in a way that causes harm. It creates a supplemental boundary layer on the contact surfaces inside the cam phaser actuators, and this is the key mechanism. It reduces the metal-on-metal friction at startup before oil pressure has fully built up, which is precisely the moment that causes phaser wear and generates the tick. But PTFE does something else that most people never discuss. In the presence of heat and pressure, exactly the conditions inside a running engine, it undergoes a mild chemical interaction with iron oxide, rust, the microscopic surface oxidation that builds up inside older engine components over years of heat cycling. The PTFE molecules bond partially to these oxidized surfaces, effectively filling in microscopic surface imperfections and creating a smoother, lower friction interface. This is not a gimmick. It is documented industrial tribology, the science of friction, lubrication, and wear, and it has been understood in manufacturing and aerospace applications since the 1960s. The automotive industry was aware of it, and for reasons that align perfectly with the financial incentives of the service industry, it was never promoted as a consumer solution. If you have watched this far, you are already in a smaller group than you realize. Most people searching for the EcoBoost tick solution give up after reading forum threads that go in circles. Most never get to this part. Stay with me, because what follows is the exact method used by the engine builders who have been quietly fixing this problem for years without a single trip to the dealership. First, establish what you are working with. If your EcoBoost tick is present only at cold start and disappears within 60 to 90 seconds, you are dealing with early stage phaser wear or borderline oil viscosity, and this method will almost certainly resolve it completely. If the tick is persistent, meaning it continues after the engine reaches operating temperature, you are dealing with more advanced wear, and while this method will still reduce the tick significantly, managing your expectations is important. Severe phaser damage may require mechanical intervention. The goal here is to address the problem before it reaches that stage, or to arrest progression if it already has. Second, your oil must be at the correct service interval. Do not apply this treatment to old, degraded oil. The PTFE additive works in concert with clean oil. It does not substitute for it. If your oil change is overdue, change the oil first. Use the manufacturer-recommended full synthetic. For most EcoBoost applications, that is 5W30 full synthetic meeting for WSS M2C946B1 specification. This is not optional. Using the wrong viscosity undermines the entire treatment. Third, with fresh oil in the engine, measure out between 15 and 20% of your total oil capacity in PTFE stabilizer for a 3.5 liter EcoBoost F150 with a 6-quart oil capacity that is approximately 1 to 1.2 quarts of additive. Do not exceed 20%. This is the mistake that causes the method to fail. People read that more is better and pour in 40 or 50% of the capacity. At that concentration, you're over-thickening the oil and restricting flow to critical components, including the phasers themselves. You're making the problem worse while believing you are solving it. 15 to 20%, no more. Pour the additive directly into the oil filler cap with the engine cold. Replace the cap. Start the engine and allow it to idle for 15 minutes without driving. This allows the additive to circulate fully and begin bonding to metal surfaces under low stress conditions. Do not rev the engine during this period. After 15 minutes of idle, take the vehicle for a 30-minute drive, a mix of highway and urban speed, nothing aggressive. Allow the oil temperature to reach full operating range. When you return, turn the engine off and allow it to sit overnight. Cold, start the engine the following morning. For the majority of EcoBoost owners with early to mid-stage ticking, the improvement will be immediate and significant. In many cases, it will be complete, the warning that no one else will tell you. This treatment needs to be repeated at every third oil change to maintain effectiveness. The PTFE film, while durable, does not permanently alter the metal surface. It is maintained by the presence of fresh additive in the oil system. Owners who do one treatment, experience the tick disappear, and then never repeat it, find the tick returning at around 15,000 to 20,000 miles later. They assume the method failed. It didn't. They stopped maintaining it. Before this ends, there is one more thing about this solution that almost nobody in the automotive community openly addresses. And it is the part that changes the long-term cost calculation entirely. PTFE treatment does not only address the phaser tick. The same boundary layer that reduces phaser friction also reduces wear on the turbocharger shaft bearings, which, in the EcoBoost design share the same oil supply. Turbocharger replacement on an EcoBoost engine runs between $1,200 and $3,000 at a dealership. The shaft bearings that fail in these turbos fail for exactly the same reason the phasers tick: inadequate oil film at startup and elevated operating temperatures from degraded oil. Owners who maintain PTFE treatment on a regular interval are, without realizing it, extending the service life of their turbocharger at the same time. This is not a side note. For high-mileage EcoBoost owners, anyone above 90,000 miles, this may be the more financially significant benefit of the two. Now, consider the full comparison. A cam phaser replacement on a 3.5-liter EcoBoost at a Ford dealership, between $1,800 and $3,500 depending on region and labor rates. An intake valve cleaning service, $400 to $700, and it does not address the phaser issue at all. A turbocharger replacement, $200 to $3,000. Total exposure for an EcoBoost owner who does nothing and allows these systems to degrade progressively, somewhere between $3,000 and $9,000 over the life of the vehicle. The cost of Lucas heavy-duty oil stabilizer at a 1-quart application every third oil change, approximately $11 per treatment. That is the arithmetic Ford, and the dealership network built a service revenue stream around hoping you would never calculate yourself. The tick is not a death sentence for your engine. It is a warning, one that the industry has a financial interest in allowing to become an expensive crisis rather than a cheap maintenance item. The owners who caught it early, treated it correctly, and maintained the treatment are still driving their EcoBoosts past 200,000 miles without a single phaser or turbo replacement on record. That is the story the dealerships will never tell you when you walk in describing the sound. Here is what you now know that most EcoBoost owners do not. The tick has a cause, a mechanism, and a solution that costs less than a restaurant meal. You know the exact application method, the exact concentration, and the exact mistake that causes it to fail. You know it protects your turbocharger as a secondary benefit that most people never connect. And you know that the industry's entire service revenue model on this engine depends on you not knowing any of it. But there is something larger here, something this tick is pointing toward that almost no one is talking about openly yet. The EcoBoost phaser and turbo wear pattern is not the only hidden degradation happening inside these engines at high mileage. There is a second system, one that interacts with both the phasers and the direct injection carbon buildup that begins to fail in a way that looks, sounds, and behaves like an entirely different and far more expensive problem. A problem that even experienced mechanics frequently misdiagnose. A problem that has a solution just as inexpensive as this one, and just as deliberately obscured. That is the next part of this story. And the cost difference between knowing it and not knowing it is the kind of number that changes whether you keep your vehicle or sell it. The question worth sitting with tonight is this: if this much was hidden about a $10 fix, what else is sitting on that shelf at the auto parts store, waiting for someone to explain what it actually does?